Welcome all to this video. Today in this video, we'll learn about Azure Boards and how you can streamline managing your teams and project work using Azure Boards. We'll start with examining a sample backlog uh, before we move on to the Azure DevOps portal for creating an organization and then a project and the team structure. We'll also look at how we can break down the entire project space into multiple areas, and then we'll set up the iterations, or we'll call it sprints. So once we're done with it, we'll import sample work items into Azure DevOps, and then we'll configure multiple levels of backlogs and Azure boards into the Azure DevOps portal. Then we'll move on to controlling the team capacity for each of the sprints we have already defined into the project, and then we'll move some items depending upon the team capacity into the sprint backlog. The last two items will be add-ons, so we'll look into the steps how we can integrate the Azure DevOps portal with Excel for the bulk updates or even bulk upload of the work items from directly from Excel into Azure DevOps. And then we'll also spend some time into tailoring or customizing the default Azure DevOps processes. So let's get right into it. Let's start with examining sample backlog, which we have created. I'll move into the Excel. So let's assume we are an organization called Smart Web Solutions who is creating an online payment portal. Um, and then the entire project is divided into multiple areas, like any cross-functional team, we will have teams from different areas coming together and working on the project. So we'll start with the design team who will design the user interface, and then the app dev team who'll come and develop the actual functionality of the portal. Database team will manage all the objects on the database side, and then we will have infrastructure team, which is again divided into two branches: server support and network support. um, they'll be uh, they'll be responsible for spinning up the infrastructure as well as the network for us. um, so, so we will have a dedicated team for each of the areas of the project, and then we'll add team members to the teams, and then we will configure multiple sprints. So we are assuming that we will be able to finish the entire project work, let's say within 6 sprints. So we will configure those iterations, bi-weekly iterations, into the Azure DevOps portal. This is the configuration, and then on the actual backlog side, so we will create the biggest level of work items called epics. We'll define one epic for each of the project area. For example, the first one will be the designing of user interface for the online payment portal, which will go to the design team. And then for the app dev team, we will have one major epic called the development of online payment portal. All the work for example, app dev team will be grouped together into that epic. We'll have a separate epics for database as well as the infrastructure team. When we expand on to the epics, we will have those epics broken down into the features. So we'll have a couple of features for the design team. For example, designing the user interface will include designing the user sign up as well as the profile page layout, and then designing the payment arrangement page. All the epics are broken down into the features, and then all the features will have the user stories, and then the development team will go ahead and create the tasks for each of those user stories. So this is a sample backlog which we are going to import into Azure DevOps, and then set up our teams, our project, and iterations to manage this work to completion.
Let's now move into Azure DevOps portal. We'll start with creating an organization right into Azure DevOps portal. So in the browser, we'll type dev.azure.com, which will take us to the Azure DevOps services. And this is my default page. Your home page might look a little different from what you see on the screen right now, but you'll see the list of organizations which is already set up for your account, and then a link to create a new organization. So since we are creating a new organization, we'll click this link. It will take us to to the form where we can select the name. We'll go with Smart Web Solutions 002, and we'll fill in the captcha. And yep, it's creating a new organization for us. So the first step into the organization is to create a project. Before that, we will review the organization settings. The organization settings menu is at the bottom left corner of the home page of Azure DevOps portal. We'll get into the organization setting. There are not many settings which will be play around because our focus is only on Azure boards, and then for most of all Azure boards, the most important settings we'll be reviewing is the processes. If you go here in the overview section, we have the organization name, and then in case we have a privacy URL, and then we have an option for deleting the organization as well. We'll jump right into the processes. When you go into the process, you'll see four default processes provided by Azure DevOps. Think of the processes like they are the templates with already selected work item types, as well as the fields within those work item types defined by Azure DevOps for us to use them as is. The four processes we have is basic, agile, Scrum, CMMI. Basic is very, I would say basic with a few work items defined, and then this could be a good start for anyone who are just starting and then they don't have a very complex backlog. Then CMMI is it's just a little bit too many work items, and then this is specifically for the development processes following CMMI processes. Most of the teams end up using either Agile or Scrum. So within Agile, if you look at, we have the backlog of the work items called epics, features, and then user stories. So most of the backlogs are is divided into epics, and then epics are broken down into features, and features are broken down into user stories, and then we define the workable tasks as part of the user stories. The teams can use bugs to track all the bugs as well as the issues, and then test case, test plan, and test suite are the three work item types specifically for testing. If we go to Scrum, it's very similar to Agile, just a couple of differences is user stories are called product backlog items here, and then issues are called impediments. Rest of everything is same. And then the default process also define the fields within the work items. And then if you see these are all logged. Logged means you cannot customize the processes, so you can use them as is provided by Azure. Towards the later end of this video, we'll try to look at the options how we can customize these processes. Now that we have created an organization, we'll go into Azure DevOps portal and then create the project and the team structure. We are into Smart Web Solutions 002, which is the organization we just created. We'll create a project called online web portal, and you can provide the description. We'll keep it private, given that we are not. This is not an open source which we are exposing outside of the organization. Then we will select the work item process as an agile process, and we'll hit create. Okay, so we have the so we created the online project for online web portal. This is the home page for the project. So let's explore the project settings. Again, the project settings button is on the bottom left corner of the home page. In the overview, again, this is the name and description, and then the process which we selected as agile, and then we have a separate section for teams. So by default, the Azure DevOps portal created the online web portal team, but as we discussed now, we know there'll be multiple teams working on the project, so we'll go ahead and create multiple teams. The first one was UX design team, and we will add a couple members into the team. Let's say Uday is one, and then we can have Ulema at smartwebsolutions.com as part of the UI design team. So we'll provide a little description. We'll keep admin as a team member, and then permission is the contributors, and then we will also select the option to create an area path along with the name of the team. We'll create. So this is the first team. We'll go ahead and create a few more teams for app dev, database, as well as infrastructure. We'll keep everything else at the same. Then we have database team, and then we have infrastructure team. Infrastructure we have easy. Let's add a couple more. We have Sam for server support, and then we have Nancy for okay. So yeah, we created 4 different teams, and then we already had the default team. If you notice, in the default team we don't have any individual, just the admin. So what we're gonna do is we will add all the teams we created into the default project team. We'll select this one and add. So instead of adding the individuals, what we're going to do is we will add the teams. For example, we have app dev team, we have UX design team, we have database team, and we have infrastructure team. Okay, let's save. So we are ready with the project for online web portal, and then we have created the teams who will be managing our work on the project. Alright, so we have created the project and the team structure. So next we will move on to dividing the entire project into multiple areas, and we'll also define the sprints. We'll be going with bi-weekly sprints. Let's get right into it. So from teams, we'll move on to the project configuration. So within the project configuration, the first thing we'll do is we will define the iterations. You already see 3 iterations created for the online web portal. We're going to go ahead and set the dates for them. We will update the name. We'll follow a naming conventions like we'll call it sprint. And then given that we will be working on a bi-weekly sprints, there'll be a total of, we can assume 26 sprints in a year, right? And then we are going to start the work in 2024, so we'll start with the sprint 2024-01. Okay, so this is the naming conventions we can follow. Um, so our sprint will start from January 1 and then it will go on for 2 weeks. So it will end at January 12th. We'll save and then we'll set up the name for second sprint, sprint 2024-02, and the starting date is already selected and the end date is selected as well. Select the dates, save and close. Looks good. We'll create a new sprint. Set the dates. We'll go on create 6 sprints, which I think should be good enough for the demonstration purpose. So now that we are ready with 6 sprints, all the dates are set. We are assuming that we'll go up to March 22nd, which will be the end of our 6th sprint to finish all the work and deploy the product into production. We'll move on to the areas side. So we already have the areas defined under online web portal, and then we have the team set up. So you remember we selected an option while creating the teams where it says while creating the teams it will also create the areas with the same name. We'll go and tweak it a little bit. So what we want is we will keep the team keyword into the team name, and then areas name will not have the team. Save and close. Database team. We'll remove the word team from section. Lets us create a hierarchical structure of the areas within the one big project. So for example, for our online web portal project, we have 4 different areas, and each area will have their own dedicated team. In case we want to create a further hierarchy, imagine there is a big organization where we have multiple levels of hierarchy, and then multiple groups and are divided into subgroups. And to create that nested structure, we can go ahead and create new childs as long as we are able to map the entire organization within the Azure DevOps portal. So we'll go one more level deep by creating another child. So under the infrastructure area, we will have a separate area called server support and network support. Okay, so both the parent area as well as the child areas are managed by infrastructure team. So right now we are not defining a dedicated team for network support as well as server support. So we are assuming that infrastructure team will take care of not just the they'll be working as a one group to take care of server support as well as the network support. So with that, we will move on to the team configuration. Yep. So there are 4 sections within the team configurations. The general section where we will define the backlog levels, the working days, as well as how we are going to manage the bugs onto the backlog. So on the backlog level, we can so most important thing is we need to select the teams. For example, in our case, we have 5 different teams, so we need to make sure when we are setting up the team configuration, the right team is selected from the top menu. For the online web portal team, this is our portfolio level. So what we want to do is we want to view the backlog levels up to epics and features, and not the user stories. So the parent structure is mainly for the management or executives to come and look at the higher level of the backlog. We'll call it portfolio backlog. And then for all the sub teams, we can select the back. We can keep the backlog level as to the features and stories, uh, and then we'll keep the working days as is, and then we will remove the bugs from the backlogs altogether. So no, we'll say bugs are not managed on the backlogs and boards. So we'll configure the same settings for rest of the teams as well. The backlog levels is to features and stories, and then bugs will not be managed with the backlog. Same thing for infrastructure, bugs will not be managed with the backlog. And then for the online web portal team, we'll say bugs are not managed with the backlog. Okay, so this is done, and then we'll move on to the iterations. Um, for the online web portal team, we have three iterations already selected, so we're gonna go ahead and add the rest of the three. 4, 5, 6. Yep. And then we will say for our sub team, again, this is one-time activity, but we have to select all the sprints for every team we have on the project. This is how we'll be able to manage the team's sprint backlog and team's sprint capacity. Save and close. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For infrastructure team, we'll do the same. And last but not least, the UI team. We'll add 5 sprints in one shot, and then we will go ahead and add the 6th sprint. So now we have selected the iterations for all the teams. Next one is the areas. We already defined the areas in the project configuration, and here just one thing we need to do is we need to make sure when we are defining an area, we will also include all the sub areas, for the team. So it says, for example, here it says UX design team has their own area, but it doesn't include the sub areas by default. So we need to select the sub areas as well. So this is important. So for example, for so our parent area is online web portal, and if we don't select this option to include sub areas, when we go to the backlog page, all the backlog will be kind of assigned to the individual teams, and at the online web portal level, you'll not be able to see any backlog. So we'll select will include the sub areas as well. And this is important for infrastructure as well. Given that we have sub areas within the infrastructure area, we need to make sure we will include the sub areas as well. We updated the general team configurations. We have defined the iterations for all the teams. We have set up the areas. See you in the next video.
All right, so we have created the project and we are done with the project settings. We created the teams and then we created the areas and we defined the iterations. So let's move on to backlogs. We'll browse the Boards hub into Azure DevOps portal. And within the Boards hub, you'll see multiple options. The first one is work items. Work items is kind of a collection of all the work items which we have defined under this project. So you have an option to filter the work items specifically for any work item types or any work items which is assigned to any individual or depending upon the work item states or areas or tags associated with the work items. The first thing to be able to visualize is to import the work items. We already reviewed our backlog into an Excel. So we will save that Excel into a CSV file and then we can import directly into Azure DevOps boards. We'll select the import option. We'll choose a file. We have a backlog file. We'll say import. And yep. So we have all the work items imported. Uh, don't forget to hit save once you see all the work items into the portal. Yep. So once we have imported all the work items, we can go to the work items section and then see the work items. If you notice, there is no hierarchy. All the work items are like independent work items, even if there is a child-parent relationship between them. This view within the Azure boards doesn't display those relationships. To see the relationships, we'll move into the backlog section. So in the backlog section, again, so we have multiple backlog levels, right? So depending upon the teams, we have different views. We'll start with the parent level, which is the online web portal team backlog. Uh, yeah. So the first thing first, we define the backlog levels as the portfolio backlog level for online web portal team, and here we can select whether we want to view the backlog at the epic level or the feature level. So by default, it's the feature level selected, but if you select the epic levels, we'll see the list of epics defined for online web portal team. Uh, yeah, we can expand on to see the child work items as well. Or if you want to expand all the work items, here is the button. So we can press plus button. It'll expand one level. If you want to expand further, we can keep clicking the expand button. If you want to collapse it back, you can collapse it back as well. And then we have column options into the backlogs where we can select all the columns which we want to view. For example, if you want to view iteration path, we haven't defined the iteration path, so let's view the area path, and we can reposition the columns as well. Uh, let's say assign to, select OK, and you'll be able to see the area paths as well as the assigned to columns. If we go to any other teams backlog, for example, let's move on to the app dev team backlog. Given that there are no work items assigned to that particular team, there's nothing visible here. And then one thing which we can verify is the backlog level. So if you remember, when setting up the project settings, we selected the backlog level to stories and features. So that's what we see here. So first thing we'll do now is we will go to the online web portal team, and then we will assign the area paths to these work items. Okay, so we will right click, we will say okay, we'll say edit and area path, and this is the design epic. We will say area path is online web portal UI design. This is how we update those items in bulk. And if we go to the UI design backlog, so if we go to the UI design team, we will see the backlog. And if you want to go to the feature level, there are two features defined for UI design team, and then multiple user stories, and those user stories were broken down into tasks. Again, it's the same thing. We can update the column option to select any columns which we want to view. And then another important view is this one. So if you want to turn off the parents, we can turn it off, or we can toggle it on or off. So when we turn on the parent on, it displays the epics assigned to those features as well. And if you move to the backlog level to the user stories, it will still continue displaying the parents as well. This is how the backlogs are managed. And then if some teams find it easier to work with Kanban boards, Uh, and those Kanban boards are defined into the board section on the boards hub in Azure DevOps portal. The idea of boards is to being able to visualize the flow of the work. So, for example, right now, all the user stories which we see here are into the new state. In order to move it to the next state, all we need to do is dragging and dropping it to the corresponding column. So the moment we move this user story to the active section, its status changes to active. Um, we can directly update the task or add the task. For example, when we click the add task, we can add one more task by just providing the description of the task. And if the team is done with all the tasks, they can simply check them, and these tasks will be marked as completed. So, for example, if we click here, it'll say closed. Okay, and if we unselect those and then go ahead and see, this is a new status. Okay, so it becomes very easy for the team to manage their work directly from the boards, and and they can efficiently manage the flow of the work as well.
So far, we created the organization and we set up the project and team structure. We configured all the areas and sprints, and we imported all the work items we have into Azure DevOps portal. So now let's move on to construct the team backlog. Uh, First thing, we'll go and take a look at the nested areas we configured for the project. So this is very important to understand the nested areas before we go and take a look at the various backlog levels. So right now we have online web portal, which is the portfolio level of the areas we defined, and then we have app dev team and database infrastructure and UI design team added as the child areas to our portfolio level. All the work will still be accomplished at the child level, and we'll take a look how the work completed at the child level will be reflected at the portfolio level. Now let's move on to the backlog section. So we'll browse to the boards and then backlogs. So it's important to select which level of backlog we are viewing. So right now we are at the online web portal team backlog. And given that this is the portfolio level, and then we have the options to select at epic and feature level, we'll keep it at the epic level. The main focus of the portfolio level is to understand how the teams are progressing, and then what is the pending work at any given point of time. For that, we will add a few more columns to the portfolio level backlog. So we'll go to the column options. We'll select a column called remaining work, and then we will add a roll-up column from the quick list. Right now we'll go with progress by all work items. We don't need tags. Let's remove it. The hierarchy looks good. All right. So the remaining work is again the sum of all the work items, all the remaining work at the task level. So whatever is the estimated hours at the task level are summed up to the parent level of the work items, and then progress bar tells you the completion percentage by all the work items under any particular work item. Right now, our team haven't started working on it, so no, you'll see 0%. But again, we can go ahead and mimic, by updating some of the completion hours for the task to see how it impacts the progress at the portfolio level. So we'll use two tabs side by side. Let's go ahead and open the backlog into another tab. And now this time we'll go to the UI design team backlog. Here you'll see, we see the user stories at the default backlog level. So we have three tasks for for the first user story, which is an active status. Let's add a couple more columns here as well. The first one we need is remaining work, and then we can also make use of original estimate. Looks good. Okay. Yeah. So if we look at these tasks, so we'll add some estimated hours. First task is design a prototype. Let's estimate it to, let's say, 30, and the remaining hours is 30. Let's save and close. And then there is one more task which is not estimated yet. We'll estimate it to, let's say, just 2 hours, and the remaining hours is 2. Yeah. So now we see there is a total of 48 hours of work which is pending on this user story. And let's go back to the portfolio level backlog and see how these changes reflect to our portfolio. So now we see the total remaining hour for this epic is 218, which is again the sum total of all the child items. So the epic will reflect all the remaining hour at the feature number 1 and 2 for this epic. So if you add it, it'll be 218, and at the feature level, it'll be sum up of all the user stories. At the user story level, it will be sum of all the tasks under that user story. Let's try to update some work completion. Let's start with the first task. So let's say team already spent 30 hours and they're able to finish all the work and then mark it as completed. Okay, we'll mark it as closed and save it. Okay, so this task is completed. Original estimate was 30. There's nothing remaining now, and then total pending work at the user story level is just 18. So let's take a look at the portfolio backlog level. Now see, the progress is at 6% for the epic. Okay, and let's see how the remaining hour is impacted. So instead of 218, the remaining hour is now 188. And if you take a look at the user story, this is at 33%. You might be wondering why, even after finishing 30 hours of work, and if there is still 18 hours of work left, the percentage should be higher. There is one thing to notice. This progress is by the count of the work items. It's not by the count of hours. So this is to be careful about when we are looking at the percentage. This percentage provides an idea of how many work items are completed or closed. Not doesn't provide the percentage of remaining hours, or the number of hours team has already worked on. All right, now that we have seen the backlogs, we'll move on to the boards. Boards is a short form of Kanban boards. Kanban is another agile methodology which is used to provide a visual interactive space for the teams to manage the flow of the work. So the two ways to move to the boards, one is from the left menu, we can go to the boards, and the other way is moving directly to the boards from the backlog view. So let's go to the board for online web portal team. Okay, so similarly, as we saw in the backlog view, we see the level of the backlogs, which level of the items which we want to see on the boards. For example, for online web portal team, we can see a board with epics or the features. So when we select the features, it will provide the list of the features. When we provide epics, it will provide the list of all the epics for the level we selected from the top menu. So the idea of using Kanban board is to visualize the flow of the work. The simplest way to move, for example, an item from one state to the other is by dragging and dropping into another column. And this is one of the lean way of managing the things. It actually works towards eliminating the waste. The two important things which Kanban handles here, one is it can it provides an easy way to manage the work by updating the status and then by updating the completion of the task. Second thing is it put a limit on work in progress, which we'll see in a moment. Let's take a look at the settings of the Kanban boards. So the settings can be browsed from this gear icon on the boards. And when we click the settings, there are two sections. One is cards. In the cards, we have multiple ways to configure how these cards on the Kanban boards will look like. We can add more fields to the cards, and then we can change the styles or tag colors. Uh, and then within the board section, we have higher level configuration items. For example, if we want to add a new column or remove a column, and then if we want to set up some rules for cart reordering, or if we want to create some swim lanes. So let's move on to the column section of the boards. Here we have the capability of adding or removing the existing columns. So for example, for the features or the epics at the portfolio level, in case let's say we have a requirement to add a new column, so we want the team to work only on the approved items. So what we can do is we can have a new column called approved. So all the product managers or anyone from management can approve and then move those new items from the boards into approved section, and then the development team can take up all the approved items and then start working on it. Here is the work in progress limit, which again is a way to limit the waste. For some of the agile methodologies, all the work in progress is considered as a waste. So the idea is to keep the team focused on the most important items instead of loading them with too many things at a time. So we can set the limit per the team size, or whatever is the optimum for the team. Uh, so while creating a new column, we also need to map the state of the epic, which we saw in the backlogs. So there can be two ways. Again, approved is not mapped to resolved for sure. So we can say approved is still mapped to a new state of epic, or it can be active. It can be considered as an active. So let's go with active this time and save. Yeah. So the moment we hit save, we see a new column called approved. The moment we drag this epic from the column new to approved, you'll notice the change in the state. So right now you see the state as new. The moment I move it to approved status, it changed to active. And when we go to the backlog, the state of the first epic moves to active. So this is how we control the flow of the work. Now we can set up a rule saying that all the development team can start working only on the epics which are in the approved status. So if we move it back to the new column, the state of the epic automatically changes to new. Another very important feature in the board is setting up the swim lanes. For example, we have multiple teams working on this project. So right now we have only 4 epics, but imagine a scenario where team has let's say many epics, and then it's very confusing on to visualize which team is working on to which epics. So swim lanes helps a bit in providing better visibility if there are multiple teams or multiple groups sharing the same board. For this, we can go ahead and create a swim lane. I'll show you how. So we'll add a swim lane. We'll name it to, let's say, AppDev, and change the color to any bright color. Okay, and then we can set up a rule by adding a criteria. We'll say if the area path is let's say AppDev, these items will show up in their own swim lane. Let's add one more swim lane for UI design. Add a new color. Let's go with purple this time, and a similar rule where we'll say the area path is UI design. Let's save it. Okay, so 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 now we see two swim lanes, one for UI design, one for app dev, and then the other one is default. The moment we drag, for example, this Apex, or we know designing the user interface belongs to the UI design. So if I drag it to the default swim lane, it will automatically move it to the UI design. The development, if I move it to the default, it will move to the app dev swim lane, given that it knows there is the area path is configured as app dev. And for this one, we don't have a rule, so this is the database epic. And since we don't have a rule or a dedicated swim lane, it stays in the default default swim lane. We can create two more swim lanes for database as well as the infrastructure teams work. So this was at the portfolio level. Again, when we go to the team level, the view will be a little bit different. So let's say if we go to the UI design teams board, we see either the option to select either stories or the features. Let's go with the stories, and then it's very similar, but there are different there is a different way to manage, given that the view for the teams is a little bit limited as compared to the portfolio level. Again, it's the same thing. We can configure the columns on the team level boards. We can configure the swim lanes. Again, we can have another criteria to create swim lanes for better visibility for the team. For example, if we want to create a high priority swim lane, where we want to highlight the high priority items for the team, so that they can catch the high priority items first instead of working on the low priority. So we can define a criteria saying, if the priority of user story is 1, move it to high priority swim lane. All other items goes to the default swim lane. We'll hit save, and yeah, so we see high priority swim lane. If we go and update this user story to make its priority 1 and save, it will automatically move to the high priority swim lane. The idea is teams should not look into too much details. They will come to the board, they'll see which one is the high priority item, they'll finish the high priority items first, and then move on to rest of the items. Well, now we are familiar with the team backlogs and team boards. We can move on to sprint planning. Within sprint planning, we'll be covering how to set up the team capacity and then assign the work to the team depending upon the capacity. Let's move on to the Azure DevOps portal. All right, so we see the backlog right now, and then right under the backlog section, we have the sprint section. So let's browse to the sprint section. A few things to note when we browse the sprint section. Number one, we need to make sure we have the right level selected here. If we are looking at the UX design team's sprint planning, we'll select it here. And then second thing, we need to have the right sprint selected. So we are planning sprint number 1 for the UI design team, so need to make sure we are at the right page. And then along with the task board and backlog, we have another option here in the header section, which is called capacity. The first thing for sprint planning we need is setting up the team capacity. So we'll browse the capacity, and then we need to add the team. One option is to add all the users individually. Second option is to add all the team members from this section. So when we say add all the team members, right now we have 2 members, Uday and Ulema, who are part of the UX design team, and then 1 administrator. So we don't want 2 to set the capacity for the administrator, we'll remove it. And then we will set up the capacity for Uday. We will set 5 hours a week, 5 hours a day, so that will be translated to 50 hours for the entire sprint. And then for Ulema, let's go with 8 hours, which is a full day capacity. And then if we have the day off for the team, we can set it up. So for example, if let's say we know that Uday will be off, let's say for 1 day in January, we can mark it here. So all the day offs will be taken out of the capacity. On the side pane, if we see the capacity of Uday, it's 45 hours for the sprint number 1 and 80 hours for sprint number for Ulema in the sprint number 1. We can hit save, saved, and then we can move on to sprint number 2. In sprint number 2 is easier. We have an option to copy the capacity from the last sprint, and then it will automatically remove the days off from the capacity. So if you see here, we have 80 hours capacity for Ulema and 50 hours for Uday. We'll hit save and then copy the same capacity for sprint number 3 as well. Okay, we'll hit save. Let's move on to sprint backlog. So right now we don't see anything here. So there is no work scheduled for or plan for sprint number 1 for UI design team. Taskboard should be empty as well. So we can browse to the UI design backlog, and then we need to make sure we have the assignments done for the team, and then we can change the view options to see the planning side menu. Right now we have nothing planned for sprint number 1. So what we're gonna do is so if we look at the iteration path, user story number 2 is planned for sprint number 2. So what we're gonna do is we will instead move user story number 1 to sprint number 1. And then I think we have a capacity, given that we have 2 developers, we should have a capacity for second user story in sprint number 1. Story number 3 can be moved to sprint number 2, and then 4 can be moved to sprint number 3. So this is how we assign the work to multiple sprints. Now if we go back to sprint, and so we see the work assigned for sprint number 1. So if we go to the work details, so what we see is Ulema has a capacity of 80 hours, but she is assigned only 48 hours of work, while Uday is over allocated. So he has a capacity of 45 hours, but he is allocated a total of 56 hours of work. One way is we can update the allocation if we feel like something can be taken off the plate from Uday and assigned to Ulema. We can do that. It's much easier to do it from the task board. So right now we see Uday is over allocated. Uday's capacity is 45 hours. So if we assign only 2 tasks to Uday, they add up to 44 hours. So he'll be good. And then the handover task, if you can assign it to Ulema, and save it. Yep. So right now we have 44 hours of work assigned when he has a capacity of 45 hours. Should look good. And then Ulema still have 20 hours of capacity left. She can take up something else as well. So in case we have an additional task or bug, we can assign it to Ulema to make sure her capacity is optimized. So this is all about sprint planning. So if we want to plan sprint number 2 as well, we can look at the assignments. So they has a capacity of 50 hours. So let's assign these 3 tasks to Uday. Okay, so he's done, and then handover. We can move it to Ulema, and then given that we have at the team level, we still have 70 hours of work uh, pending to be done. We can go to the planning section and then move another story for sprint number two. So story number four, which is into sprint number three, I think we can move it to sprint number two, given that we have an additional capacity. If we move to sprint number two, go to the task board. Yeah, this is the unassigned task. We can assign it to Ulema. So we look at the work detail. Ulema still has capacity left. So, yep. So now we have 66 hours of work assigned to Ulema, and then 48 hours of work assigned to Uday. So this is how we make sure we have the right capacity recorded into the DevOps portal for each of the sprint, and then the right amount of work can be assigned and visualized for each of the team. Well, we have covered a lot in this video. The next important item which we'll be covering now is integrating Azure DevOps portal with Excel. So this is very important, and it can be very helpful as well when we have when we have the requirement to upload the work items in Azure to be updated in bulk. Let's see how we can achieve an Azure DevOps portal. We're back to the backlog, and then as a first step, what we can do is let's go to the queries, and we will create a query to fetch all the work items we have defined so far for our project. Let's create a new query, and the Azure DevOps portal provide a template by default. We can simply run it, and then it provides a flat structure of the work items. We can choose to get a tree of work items. The moment we say tree of work items, it provides us a list, an option to select how the tree is formed. So if you select parent-child relationship for the tree, and then run the query, it provides a nice structured output. We can class, we can expand those work items, and then we can save the query. So this is to fetch all work items, and then you can save the query into either shared queries or your own folder. So we are saving it into my queries folder. Okay, so now if you see in the options, we have export to CSV option, but we don't have any option to export all these work items into Excel. What we can do is so one thing which we need for an option to appear here for being able to export everything into Excel, we need an extension. The way we install extension is by browsing the Visual Studio Marketplace. We'll search for Visual Studio Marketplace, go into Marketplace, and then we'll look for Excel, and we see Azure DevOps open in Excel extension. So we'll get it. The Visual Studio will authenticate and then add this extension to the organization we created. We are working in Smart Web Solutions 002. We'll select the organization and then add the Excel extension in it. Okay, so we'll verify. Looks like our extension is added. We'll go to the queries. My queries, open the work items. And then now we see open in Excel option into the menu. We'll select open in Excel, and then Visual Studio should open all our work items into an Excel. Okay, so Azure DevOps moved all our work items into an Excel, and this is how the Excel looks like. So we have an ID and then work item types, and then work items title and assigned to and state and tags. Okay, and if you look in the top header section, we see a separate section for team. Okay, and this can be used to update or refresh this list. So if we refresh, it will automatically refresh this list from whatever latest information we have in Azure DevOps portal. And then if you want to update something, we can update anything here and then publish our changes to Azure DevOps portal. So if we go to the backlog, if you go to the backlog and we see these epics, we'll select one epic, or maybe let's select a feature and then change the assigned to from Sukhdeep to, let's say, Ulema, and save and close. Okay, so now the first feature in the backlog is assigned to Ulema, and if we go back to the Excel and then refresh it, so right now my feature is assigned to Sukhdeep Singh in the Excel. If I refresh it, it will automatically refresh the latest changes from the Azure DevOps portal. If I want to change something from Excel, let's say if I want to change the assignment of the epic from Sukhdeep to Ulema from the Excel and publish it, it should push the changes into Azure DevOps portal. I come here, refresh the backlog, and yeah, so the epic is assigned to Ulema now. So this is how we can integrate Azure DevOps portal with an Excel, and then either refresh the changes into an Excel or push the changes from Excel into Azure DevOps portal. Okay, so with that, the last item which is pending to be discussed in this video is tailoring the Azure DevOps process. So next we'll get into the Azure DevOps portal and see how we can customize the default Azure DevOps processes to meet our own needs. So right now, if we go to the project settings and see the process we have in use is the agile. So when we click agile, it takes us to the organization settings, and we can see all the work items defined for the agile process. If we go back to all the processes, we see 4 default processes provided by Azure DevOps, and then you see the log symbol here. That means they are not customizable. If we browse, for example, agile process, and then there is no option to add a new work item type in case we have a customized work item type we want to create. And then if you browse any of the work item types and try to add new fields or update the existing fields, or no, if you want to change the states of the work items, we are not able to. Okay, so we can either view or hide, but we cannot change those. So in order to customize any process, the first step is to create an inherited process. So we can click those 3 dots right next to the process, and we can select create inherited process. So we'll name it as my custom agile process, and we can provide any description we want and say create process. Okay, so now we have a new process created, which is an exact copy of the default agile process. So let's browse this. Okay, so it's exactly the same, but now we have an option to say we want to add a new work item type. Okay, so imagine a scenario, for example, if The default work items are not sufficient, and we want to have a new work item. A common scenario could be, any development team want to work on user tickets as well. Many times the development team not only work on to focus on building the new feature, but they also have some support work or some user tickets to handle. So let's create a custom work item type called user tickets. We'll provide a description, and then we can select an icon. So we have this icon already used for tasks, so we'll use another one, so which is not in use already. And the color is already in use. Let's go with something green. Yeah, green is not in use. Okay, and then yeah, we can select the number of fields which we want to add. So for example, and every time someone creates a new user ticket, they need to provide some additional information. So one field I can think of is providing service desk service desk ticket. Okay, and type is text. Yep, options required. Yeah, this is mandatory. We want everyone to create it while creating a ticket to provide the service desk ticket number as well. Let's call it ticket ID. Add field. Okay, let's go browse the states of this new active closed, and if we want to create a new state, we can do that too. So let's create a new state. We will say deployed. Color is green for deployed. Okay, so we have new, active, deployed, and then closed. In the rules section, we can create rules in order to automate the workflow of these items. For now, we'll leave it here. We'll go to customize agile. So now that we see the new work item type which we created in the list of all work items for my custom agile. So we have no project using this process. So we'll browse to agile and projects, and we see online web portal using the agile process. So we can click here and then change the process. So we want to switch from agile to my custom agile process. We'll save and close. Okay, so now if we come back to all processes, my custom agile, and then see projects, online web portal is using my custom agile process. And if we go to the backlog level, we already configured epics and features, and if we select the configuration page, we see epics, features, and stories at the portfolio backlog level. If we go to, let's say, app dev team backlog, we see stories and features. If we go to the configuration, we do not see user tickets anywhere. So that means if we cannot select the user tickets, we'll not be able to view the user tickets into the backlog yet. For that, what we can do is we can come to the backlog level. So we need to configure the backlog levels to add the user tickets into the backlog. We do not want user tickets to be the part of portfolio backlogs, because they'll be kind of managed locally by the teams. So what we can do is we can probably add those user tickets to the requirement backlog. We'll say add it or rename. So the heading is user stories. The heading is stories, and then right now it is configured to select only the user stories. So we will select user tickets as well and call the heading as stories and tickets, and we will save it. Okay, so the requirement backlog heading is called stories and tickets, and then work items, it will display user stories as well as user tickets. If we come here and refresh this page, we see features and stories and tickets. So if we select features, it should display all the features, and then if we select stories and tickets, it should display a list of stories as well as tickets. Uh, how we can confirm that tickets will appear here? We'll try to create a new work item. When we try to create a new work item, now we have an option to select either we are creating a user story or a user ticket. Okay, the login page is not working, so let's try to create a user ticket. Okay, so it says field service desk ticket cannot be empty. So we created a new field for the user tickets, right? Uh, so and we made it mandatory. So it's just mandatory to provide the ticket ID from our service desk portal before we can even save the user tickets. So let's provide a ticket ID, save it, and the user ticket appears into the Teams backlog. Okay, and yep, and this can be planned into Teams work, and then this can be a plan to a sprint. Well, as part of the customization process, we can also try exploring creating the rules. Rules can be a good tool to automate a part of the process, or to mandate a particular step in the development process. Think of a scenario where every time a user ticket is worked upon and moved into deployed status, we can mandate the developers to provide the approved release ID before they can even move a user ticket to deployed status. So a release ID can be accessed at a later point as part of the audit for the user tickets to make sure due process was followed, and then all the user tickets are deployed into production only after an approval from the management. Let's try creating a new field. We'll call it release ID. I'll keep it text, and not we'll keep it not required, because whenever we create a user ticket, we will not have a release ID. But again, we can use the rules to mandate providing the release ID when the user ticket is moved from active status to deployed status. Let's create a rule here. We'll say mandatory release ID. So the condition is when a work item state changed to, let's say, deployed status, and then there can be multiple actions we can select from, but for this case we want to make sure every time the user ticket is moved to deployed status, the developers need to provide a value for the release ID. Okay, let's save it. The rule is saved, and we have already created a state called deployed, and then we have already created a field for release ID, and then we have a rule to make sure every time a work item, a user story to be specific, is moved to deployed, the developer need to provide the release ID. Let's go ahead and try updating the user ticket. The release ID column is available here. We can assume that all the work is done, and then the user ticket is ready to be moved to deployed status, and then it will enforce us to provide the release ID before we can save this user ticket to deployed status. Release ID 2024-02, and we can say save. Well, so with that, I think we covered a lot of things into the customization process. There are still many things which can be done with Azure DevOps to cater your particular needs. And with that, we come to an end of this video. So I hope you find this video useful. Bye for now, and see you in the next video.